Take a deep breath. Welcome back to my Candid Talk with you today. Thank you so much for joining me. See, recently for the last week, we've had pretty cold weather at night and then pretty hot weather during the day. And yesterday I asked for rain, and lo and behold, here's my rain, and I'm running outside to broadcast my next message with you. Now, originally I called this My Experiences because I wanted to talk about, my experiences. And I've recently changed the name to Candid Talks, and candid means, at least how I perceive it, there goes the word perception again. I perceive the word candid to just be frank talks, like just very direct. I say what I say, and I share with you what I've learned, the things that I've seen, and I have a lot of things that I've seen and wish to talk about. However, as the tortoise told the hare, or the lesson that the hare learned from the tortoise, is that slow and steady wins the race. And there's another saying called baby steps. I often find myself pulled into discussions, maybe we'll call it, with people who haven't yet awakened to anything. And I realized, or not that I realized, I literally had someone tell me, baby steps. And that was the whole comment. And of course I understood it as, I want to get out there just like many other people, and we want to tell the world everything we know, whether it's egoic based, or it's that we're so excited that things in the world are changing and we just want to go out and tell everybody. Well, we all need to take our baby steps, because one of the important things that I've learned about sharing, first of all, is those who are ready will be guided to the information when they are ready. And that even though I put things out there for people to listen to, it's truly up to them whether or not they're ready for it. And that I am simply a messenger, and trust that eventually we'll get to where we're going. So anyways, I definitely appreciate you. I appreciate you always, and I hope that's equal, for joining me today. So now that we've spent almost 3.5 minutes talking about that, I wanted to talk about what actually excites me. And for the first time, normally when I start these talks, I have a little bit of discomfort in my stomach. I'm nervous, or whatever it is, nerves and such. However, this time I don't, because I watched a live stream Q&A on the weekend, and one of the questions was brought up of, what can we do? Like, they were asking for recommendations or ideas for healing. And I think that healing is a very important topic for our journey forward, simply because that's how we're going to get to where we're going. And it's important because I think that healing has to be reknown and rearticulated, that the solutions to our healing aren't necessarily on the outside of us. There's a lot of talk about how we have to take our power back, and taking our power back is holding ourselves accountable and learning how we can assist our own body in healing. And so one of the things that I most resonate when it came to healing was my experience with thought field therapy, also known as TFT. So I wanted to dedicate this whole entire video today, or podcast, because I recently turned this into a podcast as well. I wanted to start this talk today about thought field therapy. And yeah, I have a lot to say about this subject because it's been very powerful in my own healing journey. And when we share, like the Care Bears say, sharing is caring, and so I'm here to share with you today. So as I mentioned, what I'm here to talk about is something called thought field therapy, also known as TFT. Now, this was a technique that was developed by a man named Dr. Roger Callahan. This is not a new age. This is a technique that has been developed continuously and enhanced and improved and has been used for over 30 years. There's actually a book that was written by Dr. Callahan quite a while ago. I managed to get a copy. I'm not sure if it's in print. I will link it down below. However, I had the, I don't know what the word to look for it is. I had the, I was lucky enough, fortunate. I was fortunate enough to actually take this course online by his wife. Dr. Roger Callahan has passed. However, his wife continues to help the world learn this proven technique. Actually, one of the interesting things is I discovered that this technique was used in different situations in Africa, as well as the most recent, I guess it wasn't most recent, but a couple years ago when there was a rather large earthquake in Turkey, people went over to Turkey to help relieve the trauma that an earthquake, like being involved or being a survivor of an earthquake, can cause. So that's what this technique is used for. In most cases, it's to relieve traumas. And these traumas can be something that you've experienced yourself. They can be phobias. They can be simple traumas or complex traumas. They can even be traumas that are inherited or generational traumas. There's quite a few uses for it. And as I was going through the actual course material, I learned different techniques for different types of traumas. And essentially what this is, actually before I get to what it is, because this is my experience, I wanted to talk about where I discovered this. I was introduced to thought field therapy when I became a member, or actually before I became a member, but I learned how to actually use it properly and train myself in it using the online course stuff when I was a member of the Global Information Network. And this is a highly recommended technique that is used to, as I said, help persons release trauma, because when we can release trauma, we can be better versions of ourselves. Now, there is a technique that was developed after this by people who had originally studied TFT and thought that they would do it better, perhaps, or whatever they thought their reasoning was for doing it differently. And this was called EFT. And so, however, TFT is the original, and EFT was other people taking the original information and converting it into their own information. Now, how I see trauma. So, I want you to imagine that a human being is a big ball of light, like a big ball. And within that light, all around us, we are like all within that big ball of light, that there are lots of light particles or light frequencies that are floating around in that big ball of light. Now, what I would like for you to do is then imagine that within that big ball of light, there's a whole bunch of strands of darkness or entities or demons or traumas or whatever you prefer to call, well, essentially your traumas. And within that big ball of light, now there are many of them, say, and they can be whatever that you are personally experiencing. And why I mention this is because later I'm going to go on to talking about healing, but this is just a little bit. So if we have this big ball of light that we are, or you're imagining it, and within that ball of light, there's all these thin and sometimes thicker threads of traumas that you are holding on to, or that we're holding on to. Now, what thought field therapy does, or what it facilitates the process of, is removing those lower vibrational frequencies which are being harbored within that ball of light. So you can imagine it as reaching into the ball of light. I know I said we're the ball of light, but imagine reaching into this ball of light, which is us, and pulling out, removing those threads. And thought field therapy, TFT, I believe actually does that. It helps you release the trauma. It helps you release things such as guilt and pain. And I'm not referring to physical pain. I'm referring to like emotional pain. And shame and traumas, as I said, whether they're complex or simple or phobias. Sometimes we don't even know why we have a phobia. They can also help generationally. So it means that I believe that they can help us remove some of the traumas that have been passed down by our families, and maybe even past lives. Now, the interesting thing is about how thought field therapy is done. Like, I highly recommend that you definitely go into the link below to the original site that I personally learned it from myself, and look into it for yourself. But a little bit about thought field therapy, or of course you can just pick up the book. So thought field therapy works on the similar principles as does Chinese acupuncture or acupressure. Now, the idea with those modalities of healing, as well as the thought field therapy, is that there are meridians within the body. Now, as I've said before, and I truly do believe, we are all created of energy. Like, if you go down to the core of who we are energy. Everything is energy. However, in our body themselves, there are things called meridians, and those are the pathways of which energy flows. And occasionally, as discovered by Chinese medicine some 5,000 years or a lot more ago, is that energy flows through these meridians, and occasionally they can get blocked. Now, with Chinese acupuncture, you do have to use needles, and acupressure, you do have to apply, or have someone else apply, a considerable amount of pressure. However, with TFT, simply there's doing a tapping sequence on those specific points. And as I mentioned before, TFT has been used or utilized for over 30 years. And it's been used worldwide, and it's very effective in my experience. And so learning these algorithms or these tapping sequences and discovering where on the body to apply them in what order is definitely something worthy of a person's time who wishes to self-heal, wishes to take their power back and help themselves. Now, my personal experience with TFT is that when I originally used it, I occasionally used it. And what I mean I originally used it is I learned a couple basic sequences, and I wouldn't even call it learnt. I would more so say as memorize or be aware of these sequences, and I kind of knew where to tap and And you know, the interesting thing about any type of healing modality is consistency will increase the effectiveness of anything. If you're simply doing something one time and then deciding it doesn't work, guess what? It's not going to work. And that's kind of my own personal experience with it in the beginning, is that I was trying to do it, but as Master Yoda said, there is no try, there's do or not do. And so one day I decided that I would purchase the course, because of course you have to purchase things. Like, that's one thing about everything in life. There has to be an energetic exchange for something to truly benefit you. Like, and so I made the decision, I made the choice to purchase the course. I did have access to a lot of the materials prior to purchasing the course. However, when I purchased the course, I made a conscious decision that I was going to complete the course because I had purchased the course. And I devoted an entire week, and I went away and I studied the materials, I practiced the materials, I did a lot of, we'll call it homework. And during the course, you actually have to find 3 willing participants so that you can do a practice session. I forgot which word they referred to it as, but you gotta do a report on how and your experience with 3 willing participants. And so I did this course, and when I finished it, I then continued to practice the TFT on myself for over 100 days, almost in a row. I know I missed a few days in there, not important. And I'm not saying that you're gonna have to dedicate 100 days. It's just, I was determined to heal myself from many different things. And so I did. I'm not gonna go through a whole talk about what I did in the future. I'm sure I'll do that, because this is about focusing on the TFT itself. So I dedicated myself to over 100 days of going to Starbucks, is where I mostly went to do this. I would sit in the middle of Starbucks drinking my coffee and essentially looking at my instruction book and tapping on different sequences depending on where I felt the need to do the tapping that day. And what I mean by that is, as I was mentioning before, there's lots of different issues that we all have. And so some issues, you may feel them in one place, and other people's issues, you may feel them in another place, and there's lots of different reasons for it. So through all the course material, you would learn how to basically determine which sequence you should be using. And anyways, so for the 100 days, I constantly tapped on myself. I felt that I was able to relieve myself of considerable amount of traumas, pains, usually emotional, like I said, guilt or anxiety or stress or whatever it was. There was one point in time where I actually felt, while I was doing, or when I finished it, that I had I honestly felt that I had relieved myself of a trauma from a past life when I was part of the Roman Empire. I didn't really get too much more from my intuition than that, but suddenly that just flashed through my mind. Now, where am I going with this? Well, let's get all the way to the benefits. You know, there is honestly a lot more to talk about when it comes to this. However, as I said, I definitely recommend you possibly looking up at this and seeing if it resonates with you or not. Now, the benefits of TFT for myself is that it instantly worked. I instantly noticed an effect. If I had an anxiety that was known at the time, for instance, if I just got into an argument, or I knew what my challenge was in that moment, in that treatment, instantly it would go away. At other situations, I had to do a little digging around to try to figure out what it was, but I also trusted my intuition, which I believe is our connection to God, to our higher selves. And I trusted that it was working, that it did something. And even the consistency of it, even if on those days that I was more challenged, I know without a doubt that the consistency is also what helps. Now, one of the major benefits is, although I'm, I guess in a sense, trained as a practitioner to help people with this, this is something that you can do on yourself. And that is so empowering when you can take your healing in your own hands, and there's nothing that can be lost. Like, this is a very non-evasive, I think is the word, treatment, and you can take it in your hands. And if you're dead set or hell-bent, I don't know why those words exist, but if you're determined, if you're determined to heal yourself, you can do this as many times a day as you want until you are flying without the Red Bull. Now, one of the most impressive things about this treatment is that you don't have to know what the trauma is. You don't have to know why the trauma happened. See, a lot of other therapies will require you to talk through it. And one interesting thing about talking through your past traumas is your body does not know whether it's experiencing it now or later. And that's, you can, not now or later, now or in the past. Like, your body doesn't necessarily reflect it. So when we talk through our traumas, our body will generally often, yeah, we'll use that word. Our body will often release the chemicals, the stressors, the endorphins, the cortisol, whatever it is. Your body doesn't know, and that's a lot of times why when we're telling our stories, our traumas, our things that happen to us, we often get re-engaged in the emotion of anger or fear or excitement. And doing this, there is some talking about it, but it's more of like finding a direction, and then once we found the direction, there isn't too much more talking about it. You don't have to live through it. Not only that, if you do experience this with a practitioner, you don't even have to tell them what the trauma was. You don't have to open yourself up in order for this to be effective. And remember what I said, this has been used for over 30 years. It's not something that's new or new aged or anything like that. It's a proven technique. There's books written about it. There's people that are copying the information and doing it themselves. So if you're just learning about this, you can trust that if you truly want to take back your health, this is definitely something that has the potential to help. But as I said, it's important that consistency, it's important that your belief in something, anything that we have belief in, has a much higher chance of being effective. So I love the rain. I love that it picked up in the rain. I like that little farmhouse building over there. Looks like some sort of like chicken coop or something like that. I just love rain. It's so therapeutic. I'll tell you a little story since we're having Candid Talk. When I was in my, I guess, early 20s, I won a scholarship to go to university in Japan. And when I was there, see, I reside, or I was born to a temperate rainforest. So British Columbia has an awful lot of rain. And when I took this trip out of Canada and I went to Momoyama Daigaku, which is a university in Osaka, Japan. When I was there, there was no rain. The whole time, no rain. And coming from an environment where it rains weekly, it was quite a long stretch without having my rain by my side. And so one night it actually rained, and it wasn't normal rain. Nope, it was a typhoon. And I was living in a high-rise at the time with a host family. At 10 o'clock, the typhoon comes, and I get my jacket on and my shoes on, and they're like, my host family's looking at me like all strange and stuff, because, you know, as with anything, weather channels, like, they promote fear, and they were shocked that I was going outside to be in the typhoon. And I went outside, and I was actually able to almost lay back in the wind. It was amazing. It was a unique experience, but that whole experience, and then it never rained again after that. That whole experience truly helped me appreciate all forms of rain. Rain is such an amazing, amazing healing modality for myself. Now, one of the things I just want to finish up with this is, there's a person that I've learned a lot from, and he's a being. His name is Bashar. He's probably been around as long as Dr. Callahan's TFT, quite a long time. At least I think there was videos of him doing this in the 80s. However, he talks about something called permission slips. And I think this is a really great metaphor for almost any healing modality out there. A permission slip is an idea of giving yourself permission for something to work. And it's based on a belief. So there are a lot of different healing modalities, whether they're self-healing or working with a practitioner, whatever it may be. But essentially, everything that we experience in our lives is somewhat like a permission slip. We give ourselves permission for it to be effective. And that comes with belief. If we believe something will work, as I was mentioning before, it has a higher, we'll call it, chance to actually work. However, if we discredit it, or if we talk down about it, or if we finish up the practice and we start talking discriminatory about it, or we just lack overall belief, or we let other people, as Kevin Trudeau said, put rats in our head about something, then it's less likely to work. So I just wanted to kind of mention that right now, because, you know, you might hear this right now and you might be super psyched about it. It might be the thing that changes everything for you, like changes the game. And then you'll go and you'll tell someone about it, and then they won't have heard this. They won't have spent the 28 minutes with me, or all the other conversations you had with me. They wouldn't have spent that. And in their disbelief, and or perhaps they have some sort of trigger or their own trauma, which makes them not want to believe, or dismisses the idea, that they may then discourage you from potentially altering the course of your entire life. And I'm not saying that this is going to. However, for me it did. And as I said in the beginning, this used to be about my experiences, and this really is my experience. This is what happened to me, and that's what these talks that I'm having are all about. Things that I have learnt, things that I have experienced, perhaps even people that I've met. Maybe in the future, I'll not do an interview, but possibly have a conversation with someone of a like mind who resonates with me, and we can talk about something. I've turned this into a podcast, so you might be hearing this on my podcast now. I plan on but also possibly, I have to research it, but expanding my podcast onto Spotify or something. I'm not sure, honestly, how long things will be the way they are. Meaning that things could change at any point in time. Like, our world is rapidly transitioning. I hope you are able to see that and appreciate what this means for our planet. Just the fact that I'm able to say any of what I am saying right now, as well as on my previous stuff, is proof in the pudding that our world has already changed very dramatically. And in future episodes, I hope you do describe. I hope you do prescribe. And yeah, anyways, I see this car just needed to come around and oh, that's just amazing. But anyways, thank you for joining me. Thank you for sharing your attention with me. And thank you for taking your own healing into your own hands just by listening to this, just by entertaining the possibility that this could help you. You are doing more than you know to help not only yourself, but the entire world. So I hope you enjoyed this rainy view. And if you are listening to this in the podcast, come back and enjoy this rainy view with me. And definitely subscribe and share in the comments. Now, in this particular series, there are no comments. However, on all my other videos, including my recent Aesop Fables series, which are shorts that are designed to get the scroller to slow down a bit and watch a minute video that talks about a moral and stuff. But yeah, all those you can comment away. But of course, comment on those videos, not this one. In the future, I'm definitely going to create a space where we can connect and comment on this stuff that I'm talking about. So thank you, and I truly hope that you have an amazing day. Love you lots. Light is love.